Hi friends! I am Emily and this is Ink Not Blood. It's 2019, y'all! I actually had a pretty good 2018, but I am looking forward to making 2019 even better. Since it's still the beginning of the year, I thought it'd be fun to look back at 2018 and check out some stats on the books that I read. In 2018, I read a total of 78 books. That was huge for me. I mean, huge. I've never read that many books in a year in my life. Never. I've always been a reader. I'm always reading a book, but 78 books in a year? I did not expect that. Broken down, it looks like I read 62 novels, 15 graphic novels, and 1 poetry collection. Out of the novels I read, there were about 9 that were of novella length, so I'm placing that at 250 pages or below. My overall page count was 27,102 pages. Wow! That is a lot of pages. Now obviously this metric only means so much because the page from a novel is not the same as a page from a graphic novel. Plus I didn't even count these 2 choose your own adventure graphic novels that I read this year because you don't read all the pages in them, you only read the pages that you go to. In terms of pages, the longest book I read this year was The Passage by Justin Cronin, which came in at 766 pages total. I don't have it with me, but that book is huge. It was interesting, but I don't think it's a series that I'll continue with. There were things I liked about it, but overall it wasn't my cup of tea. The shortest book I read was really more of a short story, but it was bound like a book, so I'm counting it as a book, and that is The Grown Up by Gillian Flynn. That one comes in at just 64 pages, and they're tiny pages. The book is like this big. It was great though. Short, sweet, spooky, loved it. Audiobooks were a game changer for me this year. I'd listened to audiobooks here and there in the past, but this year, starting in maybe May, I started listening to audiobooks all the time. In the car, when I'm doing dishes, when I'm getting ready in the morning, when I'm cooking. This nearly doubled the number of books that I read this year. So out of the 78 books I read, 38 of them were audiobooks. The Overdrive and Libby apps, pure gold. I also looked at my ratings for the year. So I took a look at all of the books that I read this year and all of the ratings that I gave those books and what the average ratings for those books were on Goodreads. So if you look at all the books I read for the year and take the average given on Goodreads for each book and then average those averages, you get an average of 4.08 stars for the books that I read in 2018. Now, my average star rating was 3.78. So on average, I was rating books lower than the average on Goodreads, which I thought was kind of interesting. I read a mixture of adult, young adult, and middle grade books this year. I started 2018 reading a lot of young adult books. I'm a really busy human, so when I sit down to read for pleasure, sometimes I just want a nice, easy story that I can fly through, and young adult books are usually really good for that. But as I started reading more and more adult books over the course of the year, I found that those books were usually the ones that left me more satisfied at the end. The stories are oftentimes more complex, the characters are usually a little older. You guys, I'm a little older too. Sometimes reading about teenagers makes me want to go out and punch a teenager. Because like, oh my god, get over yourself. Just kidding, mostly. So towards the end of the year, I was reading more and more adult fiction. And honestly, I think I'll probably focus a little bit more on adult fiction in 2019. Not that there's anything wrong with young adult fiction, and there is a lot of YA out there that has great characters and plot and a lot of substance. I am certainly not denying that. But I feel myself gravitating more towards the adult books that have been on my TBR, and so that's where I'm gonna go. So in 2018, I read 47 young adult books, 26 adult books, and 5 middle grade books. I also picked out the authors whose books I read the most. And you guys, in first place is Sarah J. Maas. Not that that's a problem, but I honestly don't think I'll be reading any more of her books. I read the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, and I'm glad I read it, but I honestly find her writing to be pretty mediocre and a little annoying. Please learn how to vary the phrasing of your sentences. And I love a good M-dash, but girl. Next, I had a slew of authors where I had read 3 of their books this year. So they all came in tied after Sarah J. Maas, and I'm just gonna list them off. So there's Kiersten White. I read the first 2 books in the And I Darken series, and I read The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein. There's Rainbow Rowell. I read Fangirl, Eleanor and Park, and Landline. I really do think that I prefer her adult fiction over her young adult fiction, but I still want to read Attachments to kind of test that theory out. I read 3 books by Marie Lu, Warcross, The Young Elites, and The Rose Society. I'm looking to get my hands on The Midnight Star to finish off that trilogy. Victoria Schwab, I am so glad I finally read your books. I read the whole Darker Shades of Magic trilogy. Top notch. I'll definitely be checking out more of her stuff. And then there's Susan Dennard. Oh, the Witchlands. My heart is in those books. How many times can I thank Vendi from Caught Between Pages for inspiring me to read those books? I just love them so much. And Bloodwitch comes out so soon and I can't wait to read it. Moving on, sometimes you read a book by an author and you just want to read anything else they've written. I came across a lot of those authors in 2018 and here are a few of them. Emily Carroll, who wrote and illustrated Through the Woods. Beautiful, check out her work, it is amazing. Bonnie Sue Hitchcock wrote The Smell of Other People's Houses, which I believe was her debut novel, and I really liked it. It was such an interesting, intimate look at coming of age, and if she comes out with another book, I will definitely read it. Maggie Stiefvater, because the Raven cycle. I read the first one and I'm ready to read the rest. Laini Taylor, oh my gosh. Her writing is so beautiful, I want to die. Okay, I don't want to die, but oh my gosh. I just want to write as beautifully as she does. I read Strange the Dreamer and Muse of Nightmares in 2018, and I'm gonna go back and read pretty much anything else she's written in 2019. I read my first book by Courtney Summers in 2018, which was Sadie. Very good, highly recommend it. Summers really seems to know how to write a thriller, so I definitely want to check out her other books. Next is Celeste Ng. She wrote Little Fires Everywhere, which I adored. And finally, Taylor Jenkins Reid, who wrote The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I mean, what an amazing book. I'd like to see what else she has to offer. To close out this video, I just wanted to give you my top books of 2018. If you follow me on Instagram, you've already seen these. I posted my top 16 books that I read last year. These are all books that I either purchased for my personal library or am planning to purchase so I can have a copy for myself. They all hold a really special place in my heart, and I would recommend these to anybody. 3 graphic novels made this list, including The Prince and the Dressmaker by Jen Wang. Oh my gosh, yes! The Tea Dragon Society by Katie O'Neill. So cute. And Through the Woods by Emily Carroll. Creepy and beautiful, and you'll love it. In YA fiction, my favorites were Sadie by Courtney Summers, The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, all of the books currently out in the Witchlands series, obviously, so Truthwitch, Windwitch, and Sightwitch, the novella, both Strange the Dreamer and Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor, because as we've established, her writing is beautiful, and The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. In adult fiction, my favorites were The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng, Beartown by Frederick Bachman, because oh my gosh, my heart was in pieces. Seriously, I've never cried that much while reading a book. The Power by Naomi Alderman, and Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Nouvelle. I'll be reading the other 2 in this series very soon because I loved it. That's all for this video. Those are the stats I have from 2018, and those are my favorite reads. If you missed my other video, I am doing a Q&A to celebrate reaching 100 subscribers, so if you have a question for me, whether it be about reading or writing or roller derby or strong woman or keeping reptiles or whatever, you can leave it down below in the comments, or you can tweet me at InkNotBlood. Oh, well, I forgot to do an awkward goodbye, so I guess this definitely counts. Goodbye! Nessa!